GM, GAGE, wherever you may be. I'm Lou. This is Tyler. We are going to talk a little about the week in NFTs, and today we were going to quickly go back to last week a little bit and talk about this Bobu sale auction. Not sure how we want to really describe it, but I guess it's considered a sale of their 20,000 shares of the 50,000 total supply of Bobu, which is part of the Azuki universe. Now, for Bobu, I think this was somewhat of a surprise, at least to me, of how quickly it sold out. It was not even just the fact of how many there were in supply, but the fact that it was one per wallet. It really bumped up gas fees pretty high, and some people were getting in between like 0.06 to 0.08 off of a 0.01 mint. So what was your initial reaction to this Bobu sale?
Yeah, it was totally the same. I casually logged in 30 minutes after the mint opened up, thinking I'd easily be able to snag one, and saw they were all gone already.
Yeah.
So I knew there'd be some demands. I think to your point, I thought the wallet limitation was going to be more of a limiter, and I thought it was going to get to the public sale on Monday, where it was going to be open and folks could get as many as they wanted. So I think everyone surprised by the amount of demand for sure.
Because I figured once they opened it up to 100, that people would be buying them in groups of that. You know, we saw some people doing a little gem sweeping, which I wasn't sure how that was going to go. Just the way that gem works on ERC 1155s, I wasn't sure on, but it seems like people were going in and grabbing them off secondary. There's a few holders of over 100 already. So the thing with this that some people compare it to, just the idea it's what 0.08 times 50,000, is that the like
FDB
current value? And I'm not sure if I necessarily agree with that per se. I think it's a little different. It's kind of like the shitcoin idea, where people are, I think, more likely to buy it when it's cheap and buy them, a few of them, versus now. So it's about 0.08, and the amount of owners is down around 15,000 now. So a good amount of people started buying extras of this. And I wonder how many people actually know that this isn't the full supply. I think a lot of people just saw it on, Mobi or AC Tools or wherever you're finding and watching sort of the highway, NFT highway, so to speak. So do you think like this only sold out because people saw it selling and they were FOMOing in? Do you think they looked at it as the upside? Or are they interested in the governance side of it?
Yeah, I don't think it's governance. So I think it's probably a combination of a few things. So certainly a bit of FOMO. People saw gas spiking. They saw, a lot of people starting to mint it. They jumped in, especially you see the price 0.01. Why not? And I think people are still actively hungry to mint good new projects in NFTs right now. Like, that is a fact. I think there's a lot of people who want to be in Azukis who are priced out. So they saw this as low cost entry, slam dunk. Let me get in the door. And I don't think people are taking into consideration the implied valuation now on this singular NFT. And, in some ways I agree with your point. Like, I don't know that you can necessarily value Bobu now at 4,000 ETH, which is roughly the fully diluted value with the 50,000 shares. Approaching this, I certainly wouldn't approach it from an investment standpoint at 0.08, just because of the potential valuation and whatnot. But it is a way to get into the community. It's a way to be a part of the one of the more important characters in the world. So as a way to participate, I still like it as an entry. From an investment standpoint, probably a little bit different story.
Yeah, then I saw there was a couple sides to the feedback on like Twitter and whatnot, where some people were mad about not getting either an airdrop or holders having the first go at this. Do you have a take on, do you think the Azuki holders, the however many, should they have gotten the first crack at this? If you hold at least one Azuki, you get in the initial sale, and then they open a secondary sale for people that are outside of it.
Absolutely not. And I hate those takes. The whole
Yeah,
point of Bobu was to expand the community of Azuki holders.
yeah.
And I believe they've accomplished that. I think we'll have to see how the numbers shake out and whatnot. But I don't know. Offhand, Azuki can't have more than like 5,500 unique owners, maybe 6,000
Mhm.
top. And now we've got 15,000 wallets at least owning Bobu. So a net addition of 9 or 10,000. I want to say they've already seen an influx in the Discord. I mean, people are complaining. Everyone wants the airdrop,
Yeah,
BAYC style. Those are still coming. This was never meant to be that, right? So
right.
you have to take into account the founder's vision for the Azuki product overall. And I think being anything but happy about the outcome of Bobo here is the wrong take for
Yeah.
any Azuki holder.
Yeah. And it's funny, I made this whole video on Bobu, and we aren't even getting to the phase 2, and I thought the phase 2 is going to be the interesting one on this sort of like gas war idea. I think overall this was successful. The fact that they didn't even get to phase 2, I think some were concerned, are they going to get to phase 2, even if it is 24 hours later? But it seemed like once it started moving, people were hopping in, gas was high, people were still willing to pay the gas for it. So I think that maybe is helping this floor stay up. A lot of people's entry points were in this range, or at
Mhm.
least 0.05, So I think that's helping with the floor currently. But yeah, this was, I'd say, probably the big thing over the weekend. There's always like one or two big things, I feel like, over the weekend. It was this, and then I'd say like crypto brokers was probably the other big, at least as far as like volume goes, drops that um, most of the market is in the red. So I think that's um, when you look at some of these other things like Bobu and the brokers, that you see, okay, there's still opportunities out there. It's not everything's in the red. So let's go into this coming week. You wrote an article that we're going to be featuring on Lucky Trader each week, the NFT Weekly article. I like this little sort of weekly calendar thrown in here with airdrops, mints, roadmaps, and project reveal stuff. So yeah, let's get into your article a little bit. I know that the initial thing is pretty much the macro trends. So let's talk about that a little bit. As I just mentioned, a lot of the projects, especially on the higher end, are in the red over the week. There's talk right now as the punks technically flipped back on the apes. The apes are, I'm not calling it like free falling or anything like that, but when you go from about 90 ETH to under 70 ETH in a week, that's a significant drop, but it's also the type of thing that at that level, like dropping 2 ETH at a time isn't like as significant, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So what's your sort of thought on this sort of macro trend of market down?
Yeah, it's not great, and that's what I led the article off with. First, let's take a look at the big picture. Look at the
Yeah.
OpenSea Dune Analytics dashboard. We see the daily candles here on the top right. I was actually I was a little happy on Friday, headed into the weekend. We actually had 5 straight days of steady or slightly increasing candles.
Hmm.
And we saw some floors bouncing back up because of that. Invisible Friends popped back up on Friday. Azuki's popped back over 10. It had been down. And then the weekend was just a disaster, um, highlighted by yesterday's $50 million day, which is, we haven't seen a number like that since the lowest part of November.
Yeah.
So it's been a long time, but the trend line is pretty obvious at this point. The liquidity is just trending down. There's really no way to shine a nicer light on it than that. and now it's starting to impact the floors. And
Mhm.
you mentioned it starts up top. I'm ready to call BAYC a free fall. I mean, that's what it is. I definitely didn't
Yeah, I didn't
expect
want
it
to
to
go that far.
go this low so fast.
Yeah. And this
Um,
is something that I've brought up on, I'm not sure if it was Lucky Trader streams or the NGMI streams, but I think part of that comes with who these ape holders are, and a lot of them held from a lot farther back. And so if you bought into this for sub 20 ETH even, and you saw an asset at 100 ETH, and I mean, some of these people, that's a high percentage of their net worth in general. And so I think they start seeing it fall. They want to list, oh, it's at 80. Oh, now it's at 70. That's where I think it was, I don't want to say primed for a free fall, but I think a little more so than a Punk's.
yeah, I think that's totally spot on. And a few other factors. We've got tax season coming up, right? People probably
Yeah.
who have a lot of gains from last year and are probably trying to figure out how they're going to pay them. We've got the SEC scrutiny coming in, and most people think it's going to be on tokens.
Mm-hmm.
What was the reason of the ape floor going so high? It was ApeCoin,
Yeah.
right? And now I think the market sentiment on the value of that airdrop is much lower than it was just a few weeks back. So you have all that, and then just general macro. People think we're headed to a recession across crypto, across equities, and NFTs are certainly not going to be spared from that if you really think that's what's going to happen. So I think that's what's driving it. I want to be very clear, like not rooting for BAYC to fall by any means. They lead the rest of the market in so many ways. So I think they're a leading indicator. When BAYC does well, it pulls a lot of other floors up as the sellers rotate into other projects. When it's coming down, it's going to have the same effect on others. And we saw it, and I pointed it out in the article, only 3 of the top 25, what I'm calling PFP projects or utility projects, were in green on the week. That was VFriends, Invisible Friends, and then Meebits, which I refer to as a stable coin in NFTs. So those actually held steady. Yeah. And the rest on the board were all down 10 to 20% in a pretty big bloodbath week.
Yeah. And punks were pretty flat. They were down like 2 ETH or something since last week. I think they were at around 70, and now they're at like 67 or something. So like they've held up a little better than some of those others. I know because I work on the sort of blue chip article, and I was going through a lot of those, and the only 2 that I had were Invisible Friends on my list, and then Punks. Those were the only 2 pieces that I even had green on, and that's because Punk's volume was up because of that one sweep that happened earlier in the week. But VFriends, I'm not sure. Do you want to talk about VFriends a little bit? Because the reason they're up has to do with their they just sort of announced the V2 version of this, and we don't have to get super into it, but basically if you had book games, you're going to be eligible for essentially a raffle, and it's 32,500 slots, which is about 25, I think it's actually 26% of the total book games collection. So basically VFriends going up because that's one of the only ones getting some positive news right now. And what's your take on that? Because I think there's sort of a move away from PFP specific projects, and people are moving more towards the like, what am I gaining from this? And it seems like maybe VFriends it's not really a PFP project. It's more like betting on Gary V. So why do you think that the initial VFriends is pumping off of that news?
I was surprised at how much it was up substantially, like 30 to 40%.
Yeah, it was like 12 or 13 up to like 18, right? Something like that.
And it seems like it's probably in line with the same theme of general flight to value right now. Like we're seeing it with punks. If you really think we're going into a multi-month bear market, where are you going to place your chips? And people trust Punks as one of the foundational NFT projects, and then I think similarly, people trust Gary Vee. He's one of the leaders in this space. He's continued to prove that he can deliver. Book games has been a success, and of course, I think people speculating on here this next version. So I think that's my general take. I haven't been quite as close to it as you have, though, I think, Lou.
Yeah, and I just know that he had that announcement, and that was like one of the big announcements of the weekend. I think it obviously it pumped the book games a little bit, and holders of that. I think last I saw the floor was around 0.4 ETH on those. It's on Immutable X, which is a little different, but yeah, the books themselves, it was I want to say it was a few $100 to just get the 12 pack of books that was worth an NFT. So if you did that and held your, I don't know, 3 to 5x off of that investment already. So it's already giving some people back that sort of value. And then the high end ones, like the rarer ones, are significant. I think double digit Ethereum on some of those. So far so good with the Gary Vee and the book games side of it. Let's go to the next section that you have. We'll talk about some upcoming drops. There's the main two that you headlined for this week is Battlefly and Hyperloop. So Battlefly is part of the treasure ecosystem. So do you think that there's any sort of, after that exploit last week, if people are going to have a little cold feet on this one?
It's a great question. And so for those who aren't super familiar, Battlefly came out with their whitelist pre-sale last week. I want to say it was the day of the exploit. So that initial momentum immediately halted. Now there is another site on Arbitrum that you can trade the assets on. It's called Tofu. So there's a bit of trading happening there, but of course the primary vision was for it to be trading on the treasure marketplace, which all of the Treasure DAO and Magic holders are incentivized to do because the secondary proceeds go back to the DAO. So that's where we're going to see majority of trading. I think we called it a bullish exploit last week, and I still think most of the community does feel that way, at least the more vocal members. I definitely could see at least a silent minority of folks who are a little bit spooked or scared off from the exploit and who are less likely to participate. But it's a free mint, and I think those who just have such a resounding, strong market sentiment around them, and with such a low initial upfront investment, I think a lot of people are still going to want to try to participate.
Yeah. And then I think I saw, going off of that point, there's 150 of the 154 small brains have been returned. So, that is probably pretty bullish as well, as far as the getting back to, not necessarily going to call it centralization or anything, but it definitely gives some people confidence when they see that okay, even with the exploit, like I could still get my assets back. So in that sense,
they closed the loop on the last 4 as well. So they essentially out of pocket returned
the
4 NFTs. So everyone is now made whole in the exploit who lost NFTs. So I think everyone's been pretty happy with that.
Yeah. So then this one is, what's the time on this launch?
So it already had its pre-sale. I want to say already 24,000 of the supply are out. So 30,000 total. So there's about 6,000 left from what I understand here.
And that one's tonight.
And that starts tonight at midnight. It is a cool game. And I've just kind of started diving into it here in the last week, just with everything that's been going on. But it's definitely play to earn strategy, PvP, P2E style game.
And they're describing it like chess.
Exactly. So the battle flies, it's like they're the foot soldiers of this metaverse. You start out as a cocoon, and you interact with the cocoon to essentially hatch your battle fly, which will go into battle. There's different mods that you can leverage. There's ways to get weapons. Then essentially, there's a few different ways to play the game, where you can choose to go into battle. You can choose to stake, to essentially occur magic while you're in this arena and competing against other Battlefly players. So I'm not knee deep into the strategy just yet. It sounds like there's really a lot that's gone into this game. So clearly, I think some high expectations. The white paper, I want to say, is supposed to come out this week. So there'll be some big anticipation about that.
Yeah.
Right now, the floor is sitting at 55 magic on the frozen treasure marketplace. So it should be instantly profitable for anyone who does have a chance to get into the mint. So I expect it'll be a magic gas war on arbitrage.
Yeah. And then I think the 30,000 count, it makes me a little more excited about it, because I think the smaller counts, people look more towards and think of just the gains and like flipping aspect of it. But when there's more in the supply, it's likelier to lower the floor to an extent, until maybe you see that it's significantly profitable to be playing the game. But yeah, and this is all whitelist still. Even that last 6,000, you have to have some sort of piece of treasure in the past.
I'll confirm that. We can get it out in the show notes, but I want to say it's pure public sale tonight.
Okay. Yeah.
If I understand it correctly.
Yeah, that's cool. And this is the first sort of big drop, I guess you'd call it, since the exploit. So it'll be something to watch. And like you said, a lot of them have already been going. So it doesn't seem like people are too against it. And if there's only 6,000 left, the likelihood that those will sell out seems pretty high in this as well. So yeah, definitely something to watch for later tonight.
And I think the reason that last bullish case for this is the more established projects in Treasure all have such higher floors right now. Like it costs 800 ETH to get an NFT, really, to get into any of the ecosystems right now. So I think there's been a lot of people who've been following this over the last few months who've been waiting for an entry point to be able to get into something besides just owning the magic token.
Yeah.
And this is one of the first real chances at that. So I think that's also a big factor driving demand.
Yeah. Cool. And then the other big drop that you had mentioned in your article is also another high supply drop for the Hyperloop. Now, I know that this one, their sort of big thing is the CCO off of Loot. So we haven't really heard much from Loot in a bunch of months, I'd say. And I'm not sure if there have been many successful projects since that initial run of Loot. So what's sort of your take on this Hyperloop project?
Yeah, so this came across my radar last week. I think the concept is really interesting. So they describe it as layer 2 building block visualization layer on top of the Loot project. The items are going to come from a bag similar to the Loot bag. You'll get some customizable traits, CCO, launch, open source, everything. But what's really intrigued me, I'm going to scroll up on their Twitter a bit, is some of the fan art and the concept art that's come out, right? It shows these metaverse, hyperverse worlds, but with the characters from the other CCO projects. So like this particular tweet from the 28th of February features Loot, Blitmap, NounsDAO, Cryptodes, and Chain Runners. And those are 5 pretty big and strong communities. And I think this is one of the first examples or opportunities to be able to use those different characters together in one potential world under that whole CCO umbrella that definitely has a cult following behind it. So that definitely caught my attention. And we're showing a little bit more of the fan art and concept art here on the screen. And it's in
We get booted.
And we're back.
I think StreamYard just rugged us there. But yeah, so we were just talking about the Hyperloop, and I guess where we had left off, it was basically part of the loot universe, and I forget which part you were specifically on there.
Yeah, I've been talking through some of the fan art and just the 2D and 3D avatars that you can use in this hyperverse world across the different CCO projects. It's got an approachable mint price at 0.005. So it's intriguing. And, certainly loot has already spun so much off of it. I'm definitely going to be interested to see how this one performs out of the gate here and who gets involved.
Yeah, and I'd say like these the previews are pretty solid. It's a little different. It's kind of funny how their like artwork is on there. But it's, in a sense, it's like bringing loot to life in a way. It's like, loot before was just words, and there was a lot that you could do with it, but no one was really doing anything with it except just creating other words, and like the bags, so to speak. So I never really got into the loot all that much specifically, but I know that it was pretty big, and the idea behind it was pretty solid, but obviously the whole thing with like Blue, and then there's a ton of these cash grabs that came out of it that I think some people just were quickly off of it for that reason. So maybe this is something that can bring people back. It is going to be about 20,000, and the pre-sale starts tomorrow morning. So it'll be interesting to watch if it fully sells out, because that is a large supply in just like the current market right now.
It is, and certainly some of these CCO products aren't doing all that well on their own. I want to say like the risk or the downside is everything we've shown here is concept art or fan art, and it's dependent on the community to build those out. So if those visions don't get built out, then what are you buying into? So I think certainly make sure you understand that going into the mint. This isn't a plug and play world that exists already, right? So there's still some work to be done, but definitely an interesting vision.
Yeah. Cool. So that one will be later in the week a little bit, but obviously with the pre-sale starting, and then we do have a couple other launches that we have on our schedule throughout the week. There's the Karuti and the Muri. I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, but as you had mentioned on here, part of the sort of anime sector, and then there's the P2E that I had an interview with last week for the mythical creatures, that they're doing something a little different with how they're doing the drop, where it's 2 collections of 7,777, but it's one of the collections is the NFT, and the other one they have in what they're calling inhibitors, which is essentially like a multiplier in the staking and game aspect of your NFT. So it's kind of like a boost if you want it. So that one will be later in the week. And then at some point in time, I'm assuming we'll get a date on the imaginary ones, but I'm not sure if there's a specific time set on that. They might be waiting for the market to sort of settle a little bit before launching that. But the other thing that I wanted to talk about were these project updates. There seems like there's a few, I don't want to call them like significant, but there's some project updates on the higher end projects this week, namely CloneX, Pixelball, and BYOPills have a couple updates coming. So let's get into this a little bit. The CloneX one is more of just a snapshot for the Murakami flowers. So this is somewhat hyped project coming up. Obviously, Murakami as an artist is pretty hyped, but it's not something that most people listening, if they're not already on this list, can really get into. I think the floor for the Murakami drip is around 30 ETH right now. So this Do you think it really means much if you're a current Artifacts or CloneX owner in any way, or only just for people that are whitelisted?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like this is just going to be for the whitelisted folks. Um, but I mean, it's a big drop. Anything with Murakami
Yeah.
attached to it is going to do well. So it's just reinforces the value add that keeps getting driven back to artifact holders and CloneX holders, which seems to be a recurring theme. And I think we've seen a lot of the chatter about CloneX as the next BAYC, next blue chip. I align with that sentiment as well, and this is just another example of some benefits that they're receiving.
Yeah, and they even commented here on it where people people just love to complain in general, but they're wondering why if they own any CloneX they don't get the whitelist, and their response was basically, well, there's over 10,000 holders of CloneX and there's only 10,000 flowers, so we can't really do that. But they are basically giving them to the higher end collectors, which I think is good. It almost gives I don't want to say reason, but um, a little value back to you're spending like 30 ETH on something, or the higher end of this collection. I kind of like that they're doing it that way. And like, I'm sure there's ways that they're going to allow probably some sort of raffle where they're going to give a bunch of these spots out to other CloneX holders, especially if there's a lot of feedback like that. So um, this is one that I think that flowers drop whenever it ends up coming out. Um, I think that'll be one to watch. It's like you said, like it's one of those things where you're buying it for the artist, and people seem to really enjoy this artist. And obviously, CloneX has the success that we've already seen. And then the next one is Pixelball, and this one I think has been talked about for so much longer, and it's finally here. And basically, if you're a planet holder, meta hero holder, or a core identity, which is part of the meta heroes, you are able to get a free claim for Mint Pass 2. And they say that there's going to be additional benefits if you hold an entire set of the planets or the Genesis. So this one, the snapshot is going to be tomorrow, Tuesday, March 8th. What do you think about the Pixel Vault?
Yeah, I mean, they keep going down this road of mint passes, free to claim airdrops for holders. It started with Punk's comic at the beginning, and then it was the meta heroes, then the planet tokens, and now we're in the fourth drop, which I gotta say, it does feel in some ways a bit Ponzi-ish, right? It's all the value of these
Just
NFTs
layers.
is been on the next layer. But on their own, folks seem to enjoy the meta heroes. Then of course they've got the token that's tied into all this as
Yeah.
well. But this is a project, an ecosystem that seems to have a pretty rabid
Yeah.
ownership base and fan base. So I would expect these to perform pretty well in general, given the
Yeah.
supply and all that.
People have been waiting, and this has been the sort of reason that people have been holding the planet tokens as long as they have, because they do seem to give back to holders, which is good, I think, just in general as a project. But this one having the sets, like that's a little different. That some people were potentially thinking that it was going to be a thing, and now it's confirmed that there's going to be additional benefits, but they haven't really said what the additional is. I don't know. My guess would be maybe you get more than one pass or something. But yeah, the planets themselves are around 0.3 Ethereum. They're obviously the cheapest of these three to get in. And to be part of the universe. So it's kind of interesting if they will get more benefits than the people holding these other items that I think Meta Hero Floor is around 4, and the core identity is I don't know, like over 50 or something. Like those are the really high end stuff in the Pixel Vault universe. So it doesn't seem like there's been crazy moves. as far as the planet tokens themselves, but they do have a pretty massive supply across all of the different planets. It's in that like 0.25 range. They did run up to like over, I think up to like 0.6 or so at one point in time when this was just a thought. And it's always interesting when people are like, oh, there's going to be this drop for tokens, and then it runs up, but then when it actually happens, it's not running up. So I don't know. It's kind of that weird timing in the market as well, but I'm not really sure how to take it from that. But yeah, Mint Pass 2, people that are part of the Pixelball universe have been waiting for this, so it's good that it's finally here.
Agreed. It is still a little bit hard to come to terms with. An owner of a single planet gets the same utility as a generative
Yeah.
identity or core identity. So I'm curious how they're gonna kind of work
Yeah.
through all that a bit.
Yeah.
But certainly one to watch.
Yeah, maybe that's where they get the full set in there. Like a full set is equal to a core identity or something. So we'll see on that. And then the last one that you had mentioned in your article for these snapshots is the BYOPills. And so BYO Crafts will be able to start claiming later this week on Friday, the 11th. The snapshot has already been done. So I believe you can go onto their website and see if you have one pill and one vape, then you're able to get one of the general crafts. And then if you have those plus an apostle, you'll have an apostle tiered craft. So this is another one very similar to Pixelball, where I feel like they just keep coming out with more items and sort of stacking on top of each other, but rewarding holders. So this is a very similar setup where there's supposedly some game going on and down at some point in time, but they just keep coming out with more of these layers to it. So I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I thought they were done with the layers, and now they're coming out with these crafts.
It's a good point. I think you're spot on with your analogy to Pixel Vault. There's a lot of similarities. I think people believe in the founding team, certainly.
Yeah.
It's a project that was total dust at one point. I think what BYOPills were well below 0.1
Yeah.
for a long period of time before they unveiled everything that they've been working on and this overall world and metaverse in this BYO ecosystem. And now they seem to have certainly gained market sentiment. Everyone I know who's a part of this project is a pretty big fan and believes in this for the long term. So, I think this is in your metaverse sector plays. I think BYOPills is definitely near the top of the list.
Yeah.
As potential blue chip, so to speak. So I think there'll be a lot of anticipation around this, and then what's to come next.
Yeah, and we with the Know Your Horses guy, they're working on some BYOPills version of that where you'll be able to do some analytics and tracking, and there's a lot going on in the BYO universe. So this is a project that we'll be following pretty heavily and helping people out, staying on track with it. I haven't really been in the BYOP universe, and part of that is it's almost like if you aren't in, then do you have to get all of these things? Like, do you need to get 5 items to just be able to be part of it? And that's the part that I think is drawing me away from it, and I hope that doesn't draw just in general too many people away.
No, I think that's very fair, and I would say I'm in a similar boat to you. As I feel like I kind of missed the entry wave on this, especially it's tough knowing how cheap it was for so long. And then now, if you want to pick up one of each of the major items, you're looking at 4 or 5 ETH. At least it was around that price tag the last time I checked, and that's going to turn a few folks away. But again, if we're going to go into a more extended down or bear market, we're going to see a flight to value and a flight to the best performing teams, and there's a chance the BYO is a winner in that environment.
Yeah, and so I think that's one that if you have the pill and you have the vape and you didn't know that this was something coming up, then make sure that you are around on Friday, because you'll be able to do that. The snapshot was taken on February 18th. So if you're holding it then, and like I said, their website, you're able to go on and see what you're eligible to be claiming. So do that if you're a holder of the BYOPills in that universe. And then the last section of your article from this week was talking about some project reveals coming up. And there's a few that are going to be, or at least planned to be happening this week. The two main ones that you headlined are Ethereal Art for tomorrow, and then the Brian NFTs on next Friday. So, I mean, we talked about the Brian NFTs last week. They cut the supply from 10,000 to 5,000, and sort of quickly, in my opinion. I think it was about 4 hours in when they were supposed to have a 24-hour drop. So that one has had some FUD around it because of that. And then the Ethereal Art one tomorrow, that one should be interesting because it's a little more focused on like the art side of things. So are you looking forward to either of these? Are you potentially looking to snipe any of them or anything like that?
I'm probably on the sidelines for these two.
Yeah.
I think just in general, my investment strategy in this market is to be very, very picky.
Yeah.
In particular, and it really needs to be an overwhelming slam dunk opportunity for me to enter at this point. Just because we've already saw it in last week drops, and I think this is indicative of the new price arc that we're going to see. Is on mint day, the products that even do succeed and mint out will get an initial 24-hour window of liquidity spike, and they'll be flying off the shelves. But then once that initial hype wave is over, it's a slow decline. And we're already seeing that with some of the premier drops from last week. And I just expect the liquidity windows to become even tighter and tighter as we get into this prolonged period of down liquidity. So I would say be careful out there. Make sure you have a strong thesis behind anything that you want to buy into, and then make sure your time horizons are not, that you have some decent time.
Yeah, it's becoming a lot more of picking your spots, or like you said, just consolidating more to the stuff that you think will be there longer and will be still like building, and less of these. One thing that I mean, I'll just mention it now is like we obviously saw a slowdown in Kevin derivatives and just Kevin talk in general. Kevin floor is still around like 4 ETH, but it's not like the talk of the town. Every time you go on Twitter, you see like 3 things about Kevin and or any of those beams. So it seems like Pixelball is starting to fall behind on the conversation, which is good. I think we're back to things, but I think just the general markets right now, and with the geopolitical stuff, I think a lot of people are just keeping their money sort of close to themselves right now, and in general, not sure where to spend it or invest it. So I think this week we'll see like if some of these things just continue to free fall, or if they just start leveling out again, because they're not going to be, at least as of now, it doesn't seem there's going to be like 20 projects minting a day for the next week. It seems like it's more in this cycle of less stuff minting.
Totally agree, and we see that in the schedule. I also don't want to scare everyone completely off.
Yeah.
Their Cyber Brokers was a massive win for anyone who minted that last week. And in hindsight, looking at last week's schedule, that was the most obvious play on the board, with Josie Bellini and her art, and how well it performed. I mean, it definitely ran higher than I expected it to, but of all the potential plays on the board last week, that one, it makes the most sense that is the one who had the most success. So I think keeping your nose down, following the projects, reading the Twitter vibes, and starting to get a sense for the new drops can still be a great strategy. It's just definitely not going to be a slam dunk, to mint everything.
Yeah, and obviously we're seeing it with the coins too. And so it's not just NFTs. I think that's the important thing for people to realize is it's just, I think in general, people aren't sure just what the market's going to do. There's the FOMC meeting next week, and then, but I don't think we find out the minutes until later. But that's one that's going to be talked about in like interest rates and in general, the market like that. So it'll be an interesting few weeks, I think. In general, people are slower as far as the volume goes, as we showed earlier. It'll be good to continue to watch those charts though and see if volume starts picking back up, because I do think a lot of these things, like we talk about the bottom and sometimes you talk about like top a lot, but there's going to be levels where people are waiting for some of these things to hit to then buy in. And stuff like the BAYC, I'm sure a lot of people probably are looking at it and thinking like, oh, 50 is an immediate buy if it gets there. So that's a lot of the times what ends up sort of saving the market or coins in general is people buying in once it hits that whatever level. That's like where all the buy pressure comes in. So that's something that I'll be trying to watch is once people start buying into like big waves of some of these things. Chicago Spartans talking about, he's asking about any speculation on the Gutter Cat Gang town hall tonight. This is another higher end project. Like I include them in my 10 projects for the Blue Chip article because I think there's a significant talk, I guess, on Twitter, and the people that hold are into a lot of these other projects as well. It's got the smaller supply, so there's somewhat less people that are connected to it, but I think they have an important town hall tonight. They came out with their roadmap, I don't know, a month ago or so. So that's one that we plan on being what's the word? I guess just covering as far as Lucky Trader. So we'll probably come out with an article. I think that's 8 p.m. tonight. It's 8 or 9 p.m. tonight. So either after that or it's kind of late. Maybe we'll be publishing it tomorrow, but we'll be covering that town hall Spartan. So anything that comes up, we'll make note of and send it out to the people.
Yeah, Lou, just quickly on that. I think already you can call GCG's last week a win. I'm looking back at the top 20 right now. Most of the board is down 10 to 20%. Gutter Cat Gang was even on the week at 5.75. So holding steady in this macro, it is a win. So clearly there's some speculation about some good news coming out of this town hall today.
Yeah, they were one of the ones that when I was checking it weren't really down bad, like some of them were. But yeah, they've been, I feel like since they've been over 5, they've just always had enough pressure above. And there's only 3,000 of them, so there's never too much sell pressure on them just because there's less of the holders, which is good. And a lot of the holders are just holding for a while, and they get things like the merch, and they've had physicals and the gang as they like to call it on Twitter. And so it seems like they have a pretty strong community. So I'm interested to see if anything comes out of this town hall that we maybe haven't seen before or we're already expecting. Because those roadmaps, when they come out with the pictures, it's all like, ooh, what's that mean? What's that mean? So it'll be good if they put some extra words and back up to it. So yeah, that's pretty much it for me. I don't know. Do you have anything else that we haven't touched on that you're looking at this week?
I think we covered it. I think the only last time we touched on the Treasure ecosystem, the big open item is when they're going to open the marketplace back up. So the latest is they're going to put a proposal out to the community to essentially vote on if they're comfortable opening the marketplace as is, knowing that the audit hasn't been completed yet, or if they want folks to wait.
Yeah.
So for anyone in that ecosystem, pay attention to that. That's going to be important. I think a lot of folks are ready for that marketplace to be back open.
And then you said for Battlefly, it'll be on Tofu if Treasure's not back up yet.
It'll be on their website, and then I guess that would be the only secondary option.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense then. And then I was gonna say, if there's no marketplace at the beginning, that could uh, do a short term, a little supply squeeze in a way. If people don't know where or how they can list their items. So cool. Yeah, so we'll be back on Thursday. Hopefully we'll have a good amount of this stuff cleared up that we can talk about, and see if there's anything else that happened in the week. I know there's a lot of people that are down right now, just sentiment wise. So we'll see if anything happens to boost that a little bit. Hopefully we'll be in good spirits on Thursday. So
Definitely.
thanks for listening. If you stopped by, if you got through the section where StreamYard rugged us there for a little bit, we got back. But yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll be back on Thursday.